That night, March 14th, 2019, I had no idea my life was about to change completely. It was almost midnight when I received the coordinates. Inside the fighter jet's cockpit, the smell of fuel mixed with hot metal filled the air. My name is Cabé. I'm 32 years old, and I've always been an obedient soldier. But this mission would be different from all the others. Commander Josani's voice echoed through the intercom with that firm tone I knew so well. He gave me the order: eliminate a terrorist cell. Target confirmed, he said. Authorization from higher ranks. At the time, I didn't question these things. I was an experienced fighter pilot, with 73 missions completed. My job was to execute orders, not to judge whether they were right or wrong. My F-4 Phantom cut through the dark sky of Kermanshah province at an absurd speed. Up above, the stars shone with an almost unreal intensity, as if the sky itself were observing what was about to happen. In the thermal images, I saw the target, a simple, two-story building, surrounded by empty fields. The concentration of heat showed many people inside, too many people for a simple hideout. Falcon 1, confirm approach. The voice from air traffic control interrupted my thoughts. Confirming. 2 minutes to attack position, I replied automatically, but my own voice sounded strange to me. I began to descend. 3,000 meters altitude. The building grew larger and larger in my sights. I could see the windows with makeshift curtains, a faint light filtering through them. I activated the weapons system. 2 AGM-65 Maverick missiles were ready. Each one could destroy that entire place in seconds. Throughout my years at the Tehran Military Academy, I was taught one thing: pilots don't think, pilots act. I lived by that principle for 14 years. But that night, as my finger approached the trigger, something different happened inside me, a feeling I had never felt before. I pressed the button. Nothing happened. I looked at the panel. All the systems were normal, green in all the lights, perfect working order, but the missile simply wouldn't launch. I tried again, this time pressing harder, as if that would make any difference. Sweat began to drip inside my helmet. Nothing made sense. Control, this is Falcon 1. Weapon system malfunction. Aborting approach, I communicated, trying to sound calm. A heavy silence fell on the other end. Then the commander's irritated voice. Negative, Falcon 1. Our monitoring indicates that your weaponry is perfectly operational. Make another approach immediately. I made a wide turn, gaining altitude again. My heart was pounding in my chest like never before. I checked everything manually. Every button, every connection, every system. Everything was fine. There was no logical explanation for it. I knew that aircraft like the back of my hand. I'd fired those same missiles dozens of times without any problem. Second attempt. The building came back into my view. This time I noticed movement in one of the windows. A silhouette standing there, perhaps looking up. Could they hear me? Did they know that death was looming above their heads? Align the sights. Take a deep breath. Pull the trigger. Again, nothing. I banged on the dashboard in anger and despair. This was simply impossible. The diagnostics showed everything was working. Perfect electrical circuits, explosives ready, propellants in order. But it was as if something, or someone, was physically blocking the firing. A force I couldn't explain. Control, this is Falcon 1. Confirming failure on both attempts. Requesting authorization to return to base, he said on the radio, no longer able to disguise the tension in his voice. Authorization granted, but this will have serious consequences, Captain Ahmadi. Prepare for questioning as soon as you land. The 43-minute drive back to Hamadan Air Base felt like an eternity. My hands were still trembling on the controls, but it wasn't fear of punishment that consumed me. It was something much deeper, something that shook everything I thought I understood about reality. I had just touched on something inexplicable. When I landed, it was already past 1:30 in the morning. The runway lights blinded me for a moment. Even before shutting off the engines, I saw the parked military vehicle and the silhouette of Commander Josani beside it, arms crossed. Even from a distance, I could feel his anger. To understand what happened next, I need to go back in time a little. I grew up in a small apartment in southern Tehran. There, the smell of black tea with cardamom mingled constantly with the smoke from the region's factories. My father, Farhad, worked repairing engines in the shipyards of the Persian Gulf. My mother, Sarah, cleaned the houses of wealthy people in the north. We didn't have much, but we had faith. We were truly devout. The 5 prayers every day, complete fasting during Ramadan, annual pilgrimage to visit the holy places. My father dreamed of seeing me as an engineer, but I looked at the sky and could only think of one thing: flying. When I turned 18, against my father's wishes, I enrolled in the Shahid Satari Military Academy. My mother cried so much the day I left. "Heaven wasn't made for humans," she said, gripping my arm tightly. My father said nothing, only nodded, proud but worried, and handed me the small Quran he carried when he served in the army. The first 2 years were devastating. Physical training that left half the class vomiting in the bathroom. Intense technical studies that fried our brains with high-level mathematics and physics. Aerodynamics, navigation systems, weaponry. Many gave up, but I didn't. Not only did I endure it, but I excelled. There was something about flying machines that deeply fascinated me, as if I was born to understand them. At 23, I received my fighter pilot wings. It was the most important day of my life up to that point. My father traveled from the south just for the ceremony, spending an entire month's salary on the bus fare. When he saw me in uniform with the golden insignia on my chest, he cried. 3 years passed, and I met Parisa. She worked as a translator at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. A woman with deep, dark eyes who spoke 4 languages and had a smile capable of lighting up any room. We got married a few months later, in a simple ceremony at the mosque in her neighborhood. We had 2 children. Darius, who is now 8 years old, and Soraya, who is 5. My military career took off quickly. At 29, I was already a captain, one of the Air Force's elite pilots. I had everything I ever wanted: family, career, respect. Until that night changed everything. Over the years, I flew missions on the border with Iraq, patrolled the Strait of Hormuz, and confronted insurgent groups in the eastern mountains. I received 3 medals for exceptional service, but some of these missions left marks that no decoration could erase. There's one that's never left my mind. It was 8 months before that March night. I received orders to bomb what they said was an arms depot in a rural village near the Afghan border. I executed the attack with perfect precision. Days later, rumors began circulating through the base corridors. It wasn't an arms depot at all. It was a community center. 17 people dead. 6 of them were children. Collateral damage, was all the commander said when some younger pilots questioned him. In war, there are necessary sacrifices. That's when the nightmares began. I saw faces in the explosions. I heard screams in the silence of the cabin. Parisa noticed that I woke up drenched in sweat, drank too much tea, and stared at our children with an almost desperate intensity, as if I needed to memorize every detail of their little faces before something terrible happened. One day, Colonel Rahimi called me into his office. He was a 62-year-old veteran, the man with the most flight hours in the entire Air Force. He closed the door slowly, something he never did, and served me tea in silence. "The day will come," he said finally, looking at the cup as if searching for answers in the tea leaves, "when you will receive a mission that will transform you, a mission where the enemy is not what you were told it was." He raised his eyes to me. "When that day comes, you will have to choose, to be a soldier or to be a man." At that moment, I didn't quite understand what he meant, but now I understand perfectly, because that's exactly what happened that night of March 14th. When the missiles refused to fire, when I returned to base facing the wrath of my superiors, something awakened within me, a question that had been buried beneath years of training, discipline, and blind obedience. What if I was fighting on the wrong side? Commander Josini was waiting for me in the interrogation room, a windowless place, lit by fluorescent lamps that buzzed like trapped insects. 2 military intelligence officers guarded the door. The air smelled of industrial disinfectant, mixed with something else: fear. "Sit down, Captain Ahmadi," he ordered. His voice cut like glass. I sat down. The metal chair was freezing even through my flight suit. "Explain something to me." Hosseini leaned forward. "How can a decorated pilot with 73 successful missions suddenly fail to launch 2 missiles against a stationary target?" His eyes pierced me. "Is it cowardice, treason, or just plain incompetence?" "Sir, there was a complete technical failure in the weapon system," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "The controls simply didn't respond in either of the 2 attempts." "Our telemetry data shows no fault whatsoever," one of the intelligence officers interrupted. consulting a tablet. All parameters were normal. Electrical circuits, operational. Missile propulsion, operational. Guidance systems, operational. Hosseini slammed his fist on the table forcefully, making me jump in my chair. Either you're lying in the reports. Do you have a better explanation for this insubordination? It wasn't insubordination, sir. It was a technical anomaly that I can't explain. An inexplicable anomaly, he repeated scornfully. How convenient, especially when the target was a cell of Christian extremists that poses a threat to national security. When I heard the word Christians, something tightened in my chest. They weren't ordinary terrorists. They were people gathered because of their faith. Since when did praying become a crime, punishable by death? The aircraft will be inspected from the screws to the turbines, Hosseini continued. If we find out you lied about the malfunction, you'll face a court-martial. If the systems are truly compromised, we'll open an investigation for sabotage. Either way, Captain, your career is over. I spent that night detained at the base. I couldn't call Parisa. I couldn't sleep. I just waited in my room while a team of 20 technicians dismantled my fighter jet piece by piece. The report arrived at 9:30 the following morning. No mechanical, electrical, or software failures detected. All systems functioning perfectly. Armament successfully tested in ground simulation. Conclusion: aircraft in perfect operational condition. Hosseini burst into my room with the report in his hand, his face red with anger. So the problem is you, Captain. But since we can't prosecute a pilot for incompetence without concrete evidence, we'll give you a second chance. He threw the paper in my direction. The target is the same as last night, and this time there will be no excuses. A chill ran down my spine. The orders come from above. That group needs to be eliminated before the meeting ends and they disperse. Takeoff at 11 p.m. Full preparation by 10:30. I spent the whole day feeling like I was floating outside my body. I ate without tasting anything. I checked my equipment without really seeing it. I quickly called Parisa, but I couldn't say anything. Routine work. I lied. I love you. Take care of the children. Her voice sounded worried, but I hung up before she could ask any question. In the preparation room, while I was putting on my flight suit, Colonel Rahimi appeared in the doorway. The other pilots quietly left, leaving us alone. I know about your mission, he said quietly, and I know what the target is. I nodded, not trusting my own voice. Listen, son, I've been flying for 41 years. I've seen things that defy explanation. He came closer and placed his hand on my shoulder. When an aircraft refuses to shoot at innocent people, it might not be a mechanical failure. It might be something bigger telling you to stop. What are you trying to say? I whispered. I'm saying you should listen to what your conscience already knows. He squeezed my shoulder and left, without saying anything else. I walked to my fighter jet at 10:45 p.m. The same F-4 Phantom from the previous night, now supposedly repaired, although it had never shown any real defect. The technicians assured me they had tested each system 3 times. Everything was ready. The weaponry was operational, the missiles tested and approved. I took off at exactly 11 p.m. The sky was clear again, an immensity of stars that seemed to observe me with indifference. My destination was the same coordinates, the same building, the same 200 people who were probably still praying, unaware that death was looming over them for the second night in a row. When I reached cruising altitude, something strange happened to me. A profound calm came over me. It wasn't giving up. It wasn't resignation. It was as if a presence filled the cabin, a peace that made no sense amidst all that tension. Control for Falcon 1. Confirm approach to target. Falcon 1 confirming, I replied. But my own voice sounded different to me, as if it were someone else speaking. The building appeared on the thermal imager, the same scene as the previous night. Dim lights, concentrations of heat revealing people inside, apparent peace below. While I carried destruction on my wings, I started to descend. 3,000 meters, 2,500, 2,000. I activated the weapon system. This time, everything seemed to be working normally. The sight turned red. The target lock signal sounded. The panel showed. Ready to fire. My finger found the trigger. It circled. I pressed. It happened again. Nothing. But this time it was different. It wasn't just a mechanical failure. This time I felt something. A physical resistance, as if an invisible hand were covering mine, preventing me from completing the movement. I tried to press harder, putting all the pressure I could with my index finger. It was as if the button was protected by a barrier I couldn't see. "This can't be happening again," I said aloud, not knowing who I was talking to. I tried with the second missile. Same result. The technology worked, the systems responded, but at the exact moment, the critical instant of launch, something or someone blocked it. Sweat soaked my overalls. My breathing quickened, almost leading to hyperventilation. This couldn't be happening. It defied all logic, all physics, all the reality I knew. "Control, this is Falcon 1. Repeated weapon system failure," I reported. My voice was visibly trembling now. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then came Hosseini's voice, filled with hatred. "Captain Ahmadi is either lying or deliberately sabotaging this mission. It's impossible for the same aircraft to fail in the exact same way on 2 consecutive nights after a thorough inspection. Sir, I swear, I'll make a third approach." I turned around again. The G-force pressed my body against the seat. My hands trembled uncontrollably on the controls. I had crossed some kind of threshold, entered unknown territory where the rules of reality I had known my whole life simply no longer applied. Third approximation. As he was going down, something impossible happened. It was Aura 17, altitude of 2,300 meters, speed of 600 km/h. The building occupied the exact center of my sights, illuminated by the greenish light of night vision. And then I heard the voice. It wasn't in my head. It wasn't my imagination. It was an audible, clear, resonant voice that completely filled the F-4 Phantom's cockpit, as if someone were sitting in the back seat, but I was flying alone. "You will not touch my children." I froze. Every muscle in my body tensed at once. I turned my head sharply, searching for the source of the sound. The cabin was empty. Oxygen was flowing normally through the mask. The instruments were working perfectly. There was no interference with communications. There was no radio station that could explain that voice. "Control, did you hear that?" I transmitted urgently. "Negative, Falcon 1. Nothing was transmitted. Proceed with the mission." But I had heard as clearly as I could now hear my own panting breath inside the helmet, the roar of the engines, the beeps of the navigation systems. I kept going down, but every fiber of my being screamed for me to stop. The building loomed larger before me. Now I could see details. An old pickup truck parked outside, clothes hanging on a clothesline, a small garden with trees. My finger went back to the trigger. I had to try. I had to prove that I could carry out the order, that I wasn't a coward, that I wasn't going crazy. And then the voice spoke again, this time with more intensity, with an authority that made everything inside me tremble. "They are praying for you, Cabé, son of Farhad, praying for the pilot who is coming to destroy them. Will you kill those who intercede for your soul?" My hand pulled away from the controls as if the metal were glowing red hot. The plane shuddered at my sudden reaction. My eyes filled with tears that blurred my vision inside the helmet. That was impossible. It couldn't be happening. Voices don't speak from nothing. The dead don't pray for their executioners. But I knew, with a certainty that defied all logic, that what I had heard was real. More real than the controls in my hands. More real than the night sky around me. More real than anything I had experienced in my 32 years of life. Who are you?" I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. This time there was no answer in words. But something deeper happened. A presence filled the cabin, tangible as air, dense as water, warm as the sun. It wasn't threatening, it was the opposite. Absolute peace, unconditional love, an acceptance so complete it left me breathless. Because at that moment, in that split second suspended between heaven and earth, between obedience and rebellion, between my past life and what was to come, I knew exactly who had spoken. I had tried to destroy people who were praying, and their God told me to stop. I aborted the approach. I pulled hard on the stick, gaining altitude rapidly, moving away from the target. My breathing was erratic. Tears streamed down my face. I no longer cared about the static on the radio, the furious orders. I didn't care that my military career was ending. I didn't care about anything but the crushing weight of what I had just witnessed. "Falcon 1, what the hell are you doing?" Hosseini roared through the communicator. "Return to target immediately." "I can't," I replied simply. My voice sounded strangely calm now, despite the tears. "I'm not going to do it." "What do you mean it can't be done?" "It's a direct order." Then arrest me when I land. I turned off the communicator. The silence that followed was sacred. I flew in wide circles over the mountains, too shaken to return immediately. I needed time to process the impossible that had just happened. The crescent moon hovered on the eastern horizon. Lights from small towns twinkled below like fallen stars. At that moment, 3,500 meters above Iran, surrounded by all that advanced military technology designed to kill, I felt the presence of something infinitely more powerful, a God who protects his own, even from pilots armed with missiles. I thought of my father, a devout Muslim rising before dawn to pray. I thought of my mother, carefully covering her hair every day, memorizing surahs from the Quran. I thought of my own prayers, repeated 5 times a day for years. Words recited out of obligation, not true faith. And I wondered, have I ever truly experienced God? Or have I only followed rituals, traditions, expectations? Because what had just happened wasn't a ritual. It was a direct, personal, undeniable encounter. Finally, at 1:43 a.m., I returned to Hamadan base. The landing was smooth, almost mechanical, my body functioning on autopilot, while my mind was still processing the spiritual earthquake I had experienced. Military vehicles were waiting for me. This time it wasn't just Josini. There were high-ranking officers, military police, even agents from VIVAC, the Iranian intelligence service. Their expressions ranged from fury to bewilderment. I got off the plane in silence. I offered no explanations or arguments. I simply walked towards them with a strange calmness that I myself couldn't explain. "Captain Cabé Ahmadi," said an intelligence officer I didn't know, "you are under arrest for insubordination, cowardice in the face of the enemy, and possible treason. You will be taken to solitary confinement until a full investigation is completed." I extended my wrists toward the handcuffs without resisting. As they led me away, I glanced back one last time at the F-4 Phantom. That plane had been my pride, my identity, my purpose. Now it was just a machine, a piece of metal that God had disarmed with a whisper. At that moment, I knew my life would never be the same again. They locked me in a 2-by-3-meter cell in the basement of the command building. Bare concrete walls, a metal cot, a toilet without a seat, a light that never went out. The air smelled of mold and the accumulated despair of other military prisoners who had passed through there. For 3 days, different officers interrogated me. The same questions repeated in endless variations. Why didn't you shoot? Are you involved with subversive cells? Did you receive money from foreign agencies? Are you a Christian? Are you a spy? I told the truth. I heard a voice. God spoke to me. This only made things worse. On the 4th day, they brought in a military psychiatrist, a bald man in his 50s, with thick-rimmed glasses and a permanently bored expression. He asked me questions about my childhood, my mental health, whether I used drugs, and if I had ever had hallucinations before. "Captain Ahmadi," he said finally, closing the notebook, "you are having a psychotic episode induced by post-traumatic stress. It's common in fighter pilots after prolonged missions. I recommend psychiatric treatment and permanent flight suspension." "I'm not crazy," I replied calmly. "I know what I heard." "That kind of certainty is exactly symptomatic," he retorted condescendingly. But I knew the truth, and that truth burned inside me with an intensity that grew stronger with each passing hour. On the night of the 5th day, Colonel Rahimi appeared in my cell. The guard let him in and discreetly stepped away. Rahimi sat on the cot beside me, his face marked by wrinkles that told stories of 4 decades of service. "You're going to be executed," he said bluntly. "They'll hold a military trial to maintain appearances, but the verdict has already been decided. Treason in wartime. Capital punishment." My heart sank, not from fear of the execution, but thinking about Parisa and the children. What would become of them? Rahimi continued, now in a lower voice. "There are guards at this base who disagree with many things that happen here. Guards who have seen good pilots destroyed by unjust orders." He took something out of his pocket. A small key. "The shift change is at 3 in the morning. There will be a 16-minute interval where no one will be monitoring the south corridor. This key opens the maintenance door that leads to the perimeter at the back of the base." I looked at him, incredulous at what he was suggesting. "If you're wondering why I do this," Rahimi said, standing up, "it's because 25 years ago, I received orders to bomb a hospital that supposedly harbored insurgents. I obeyed. I killed 83 people. 27 were children. His voice faltered. They later discovered that the intelligence was wrong. They were just sick civilians and doctors. I've lived with that weight every day since then. I won't let another good man carry the same burden if I can prevent it. He left the key on the cot and left without looking back. I waited. Each minute dragged on with agonizing slowness. At 2:57 a.m., I stood by the cell door. It was unlocked, exactly as Rahimi had said. I looked down the empty hallway, and I ran. The south hallway smelled of disinfectant and old paint. My bare feet barely made a sound on the worn floor. I found the maintenance door. I inserted the key, my hands trembling. I turned it. The mechanism clicked smoothly. Outside, the night was cold, maybe around 5 degrees. I was wearing only my prisoner's uniform, thin trousers and shirt. I crossed the maintenance area, staying in the shadows, avoiding the security lights. I could hear distant voices of guards patrolling, but none nearby. I reached the perimeter at the back, a 3-meter-high wire fence. There was no time to think. I climbed, ignoring the metal cutting my hands. On the other side, I fell with sharp pain in my left ankle, but I couldn't stop. I ran towards the dark hills that surrounded the base. The next 5 days were the hardest of my life. I only moved at night, sleeping in caves and under bushes during the day. I drank water from streams. I ate whatever I found along the way, fruit falling from the trees, roots. Once I stole bread from a rural bakery before dawn. My goal was Kermanshah, the city where that house was located. I didn't know exactly why. I only knew I needed to get there. It was as if an invisible compass guided me, pulling me toward the place I had tried to destroy. On the 5th night, nearly dead from hunger and exhaustion, I arrived on the outskirts of Kermanshah. My feet were bleeding. I had lost about 8 kilos. My clothes were in tatters. I looked like a beggar, a madman, anything but a decorated Air Force captain. But how would I find those Christians? I didn't know their names. I didn't know how to contact them. I only had the geographical coordinates of a building that might be empty now. I hid in an alley trying to think. Dawn was approaching. Soon the streets would be full, and someone might recognize me if my picture was circulating as a fugitive. Need help? I turned abruptly. A gentleman of about 60 years old, with a gray beard and a kind look, was standing at the entrance to the alley. He was carrying a shopping bag with vegetables. "I'm lost," I said. My voice came out hoarse from not speaking for so long. The man watched me intently. Then, with a small smile, he said something that took my breath away. "The lost are welcome in our home, especially those whom God seeks." Who are you?" I whispered. "My name is Yusuf. I'm the pastor of a small congregation here." His eyes shone with a knowledge I couldn't explain. "And I think we've been praying for you for a long time, pilot." My legs gave way. I fell to my knees in the dirty alley. For the first time since my escape, I wept openly. Yusuf knelt beside me, placed his hand on my shoulder, and began to pray softly. Words in Farsi, mixed with another language I didn't recognize, but which I somehow understood in my spirit. When he finished, he helped me up. "Come on, I'll take you somewhere safe. We have a lot to talk about." I followed him through labyrinthine streets, paths that seemed designed to confuse pursuers. Finally, we arrived at a simple house with a small garden in front. Yusuf knocked on the door in a specific pattern. 3 quick knocks, a pause, 2 slow knocks. A woman opened the door. He saw my status and immediately let us in. The smell of fresh bread almost made me faint from hunger. "Yusuf," she said. "Who is he?" "It's the pilot, Mariam, the one we've been waiting for." And then I knew. I had arrived home. They gave me food, water, and clean clothes. They let me sleep in a small room with a window overlooking an inner garden. I slept 16 hours straight, the deepest sleep I'd had in weeks. When I woke up, it was already 7 o'clock at night. Soft voices were coming from the living room. I got up, still sore but much better, and went out. The room was full. About 30 people, all looking at me with expressions that mixed curiosity, fear, and something else. Hope. Yusuf stood up. "Brothers and sisters, this is Cabé, the pilot whom God sent us." A murmur ran through the group. A young woman began to cry softly. "I don't understand," I said. "How did you know about me?" Yusuf smiled. 11 days ago, during our evening prayer meeting, a sister had a vision. I lived in hiding, moving between the homes of Christians in Kermanshah. My picture was plastered all over the police stations as a military deserter. There was a reward for my capture, 20 million rials, but God protected me in a supernatural way. There were police raids that searched neighboring houses, but never the one I was in. There were moments on the street when soldiers looked directly at me, but didn't recognize me. It was as if I were invisible to my pursuers. During that time, the church grew. My testimony spread throughout the underground Christian community. Others came, curious about the pilot whom God had prevented from attacking. People were converted. The congregation of 200 people grew to 300, then 400. And then came the news I had both feared and hoped for. Parisa and the children had been located by the Christian network. The reunion took place in a safe house on the outskirts of Kermanshah, arranged with extreme care by siblings who risked everything to make it possible. I hadn't seen my family for 73 days. When they entered through the door, accompanied by 2 Christians who had secretly brought them from Tehran, time seemed to stand still. Darius, my 8-year-old son, stared at me wide-eyed, unsure if it was real. Soraya, my 5-year-old daughter, simply ran towards me shouting, "Daddy! Daddy!" Parisa stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Her expression was a complex mix of relief, pain, confusion, and something bordering on fear. She had lost weight. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes. The authorities had interrogated her repeatedly, insisting she reveal my location. "Cabé," she finally said, her voice almost a whisper. "They say you betrayed the country, that you went mad, that you abandoned everything for a foreign religion." I walked slowly towards her, giving her space in case she wanted to back away. But she didn't back away. "Parisa, my love, I need to tell you everything. I need you to hear what happened to me on that plane." We sat down. The children snuggled against me as if they were afraid I would disappear again. And I recounted every detail: the voice, the presence, the inability to shoot, the encounter with the Christians, the transformation in my heart. Parisa cried throughout the entire story. Finally, she said something I'll never forget. "In the last few weeks, I prayed a lot. I asked Allah to protect you, to show me the truth about what happened. And I had a dream." Her voice trembled. "I dreamt that you were on a plane, but you couldn't touch the controls because there were hands of light holding yours. And a voice in the dream told me, he will not touch death, because life has touched him." She covered her face with her hands. I thought I was going crazy. But now, listening to you, I realize that perhaps everything we've been taught is incomplete. Perhaps there is more truth than we know. In the following days, Yusuf visited the safe house several times, kindly answering Parisa's numerous questions. She read the Bible they had given her, comparing it to the Quran she had memorized since childhood. She struggled with concepts that challenged her entire worldview. And then, one night, while the children slept, Parisa knelt in that small room and gave her life to Christ. She cried so much I thought she would collapse. But they were tears of liberation from someone who had carried the weight of religion her whole life and finally understood grace. The children soon followed, with that simple faith of childhood. They accepted Jesus without the theological complications that afflict adults. Darius asked, "So, Jesus is the one who stopped your bombs, Baba?" When I answered yes, he simply said, "Then he's good. I want to meet him too." We were baptized together as a family in the Karasu River. There were more witnesses this time, perhaps 50 brothers who risked being seen to celebrate with us. We sang hymns softly as the sun rose over the mountains, painting the sky with colors that seemed like a declaration of divine victory. But we knew we couldn't stay indefinitely. The authorities intensified the search. They linked my desertion to Christian activity. Raids on house churches became more frequent and violent. However, something extraordinary was happening. Every time the authorities tried to crush the Christian community, it grew. It was as if the persecution was fertilizer for the faith. The congregation grew to 500 people, then 600, and other military personnel began to appear. The first was an intelligence sergeant who had read my dossier and was disturbed by the inconsistencies. He sought answers in the Christian community. He ended up finding Christ. Then came a radar technician who had monitored my aircraft that night. He swore he had seen something inexplicable on the screen, an unidentified luminous presence in my cockpit during those critical moments. His superiors dismissed the report as equipment failure, But he knew what he had seen. One by one they arrived. Soldiers, officers, technicians. People who were part of the military machine created to suppress faith. Now, transformed by that same faith, we formed a secret network of Christian ex-military personnel. We used our tactical knowledge to protect the congregations. We warned about operations before they happened. We lost documents that identified church locations. We redirected patrols to the wrong places. We were God's spies within the system. Yusuf once asked me, "How did you go from being the weapon of the state to being the shield of the church?" "Because God showed me that the real battles aren't fought with missiles," I replied. "They're fought on our knees, in prayer. And in those battles, He always wins." Miracles became commonplace. Police operations that failed because officers suddenly received conflicting orders. Documents that mysteriously disappeared from confidential files. Intelligence agents who arrived at the right addresses but couldn't find the meetings they were looking for, as if they were spiritually blind. One night, during a meeting with 500 people, we received a warning that the secret police were on their way. 10 minutes to evacuate. It was impossible to move so many people without being detected. We knelt down and prayed. Yusuf cried out, "Lord, just as you confused the languages at Babel, confound our persecutors now." The police vehicles arrived, but instead of raiding the correct location, they stopped 3 blocks away. They arrested a completely different family, confused about their target. By the time they realized their mistake, we had already dispersed. The impact went beyond the spiritual. Communities where Christians were the majority showed real change. The opium addiction epidemic, so common in Iran, decreased dramatically among them. Families reconciled. Domestic violence practically disappeared. Young people who lived without hope found purpose. The government didn't know how to react. They could arrest people, but they couldn't stop a movement of transformed hearts. 18 months after my defection, the news we feared arrived. A massive, coordinated operation against all known churches in Kermanshah. Hundreds of soldiers. Complete lists of names. Orders to arrest everyone, including minors. Yusuf gathered the leaders together that night. "It's time for some to turn themselves in, especially those whose families are in the greatest danger." Everyone looked at me. My name topped every list of fugitives. Parisa and the children were under constant surveillance. If we were captured, the consequences would be severe. "There is a route," said a brother named Mehdi, a former smuggler who knew the mountains better than anyone. "Through the Zagros Mountains to the Turkish border. Dangerous. 28 days of walking, sub-zero temperatures, border guards. But it's possible." Parisa squeezed my hand. "Let's go together, as family." We set off 4 nights later. A group of 17 people, 5 families trying to escape. Mehdi guided us along trails, known only to goat herders. The first few days were brutal. Darius, at 8 years old, struggled with the steep terrain. I carried Soraya for hours, my legs screaming with every step. Nighttime temperatures dropped to 8 degrees. We took turns keeping a small fire going, careful that the smoke didn't reveal our position. On the 12th day, we encountered an Iranian border patrol. We hid in a cave while 5 soldiers passed by less than 50 meters away. Soraya began to cough. Parisa covered her mouth with her hand, desperate to silence her. The soldiers stopped. We held our breath. It was impossible that they hadn't heard us. One of the soldiers looked directly at the cave. He walked toward us. We prayed silently, each of us crying out to God. The soldier stopped at the entrance to the cave. He looked directly at us. And then, incredibly, he turned and shouted to his companions, "Nothing here, only rocks and shadows." He saw us. I'm absolutely certain he saw us. But something, or someone, clouded his perception. The patrol moved on. When the voices faded into the distance, we broke down in tears of relief and wonder. God was still fighting our battles. On the 23rd day, we crossed the unofficial border. Kurdish territory, technically Turkey, but without strict control. Mehdi took us to a refugee camp. Thousands of Iranians, Iraqis, and Syrians waiting for their applications to be processed. We lived in a tent for 8 months. We applied for asylum. We told our story repeatedly to immigration officials, humanitarian workers, and human rights investigators. Some believed us. Others were skeptical. But our case moved slowly through the international bureaucracy. During that time, I didn't stand still. I met other persecuted Christians in the camp. We started prayer meetings. I shared my testimony with anyone who wanted to listen. More people were converted. even in that desolate place of tents and despair. Finally, after a thorough investigation, we received approval for our asylum application. I cannot reveal exactly which country for security reasons, but it is a place where we can practice our faith freely, without fear. Now I'm living a life I never imagined. I train missionaries who go to dangerous areas, teaching them safety tactics I learned in the army. I document testimonies of persecuted Christians, preserving their stories so the world doesn't forget. I maintain secret contact with the underground church in Iran, coordinating the delivery of Bibles and resources. And I went back to flying, but not in warplanes. I fly humanitarian missions, delivering medical supplies to conflict zones, evacuating refugees from dangerous areas. The same skills I once used to destroy, I now use to save. Parisa works with refugee women, helping them process trauma and find hope. Darius, now 10 years old, wants to be a missionary when he grows up. Soraya constantly draws airplanes and writes underneath, "May God make them fly safely." The church in Kermanshah continues to grow. Yusuf faithfully shepherds, now with the help of 12 leaders. He sends me coded updates. The harvest is abundant. The workers are arriving. The enemy is confused. Every time I hear of another person transformed, another family miraculously protected, another soldier who laid down his arms to follow Christ, I remember that night in the Zagros Mountains when God spoke in my cabin. He saved me from being a murderer. He transformed me into a living testament to His power. I had a lot of time to reflect on what God has done in my life. I learned truths that I would never have discovered in a classroom or in a theology book. God doesn't need your permission to seek you with His love. I wasn't looking for God that night. I was doing the exact opposite, trying to destroy His people. Even so, He caught up with me. He stopped me. He pursued me until I had no choice but to surrender. That's grace. Love that follows even when you run away. If you're listening to this and feel you've gone too far, that you've done unforgivable things, that God could never love you, let me tell you, I pulled a trigger trying to kill 200 people who were praying, and God saved me from myself. No one is beyond His reach. God's plans are specific, not generic. That congregation didn't pray for enemies in general. They prayed specifically for the approaching pilot. 11 days before I even knew I was being sent, they were already interceding for me. God knew my name, my location, my future. He sees every detail of your life too. That battle you face, that mountain that seems impossible. God already has a specific plan for your victory. Obedience to God sometimes seems like madness to the world. When I stood before military commanders and said, I heard a voice that commanded me not to shoot, I was called crazy. For abandoning career, prestige, and security to follow Christ, my own family thought I had lost my mind. But the real madness would have been ignoring the voice of the living God. There will be times when following Jesus will make you seem foolish. Do it anyway. God transforms your weapons into instruments of redemption. I was trained to destroy. Now I use that training to protect. I received instruction in military tactics. Now I use it to help missionaries stay safe. God doesn't waste anything from your past. Everything can be redeemed, transformed, used for His glory. That mistake you made, that skill that seemed to have no spiritual value, God can use it in ways you never imagined. Faith doesn't eliminate danger, but it changes who fights their battles. I didn't cross the mountains without encountering patrols. I didn't arrive safely without facing real threats. But in every critical moment, God fought for me. Sometimes in dramatic and supernatural ways, like when the soldier saw me but didn't recognize me. Sometimes in subtle ways, like when the weather changed just when we needed shelter. Your Christian life will have struggles, but you will never face them alone. Psalm 91 is not abstract poetry. It is a literal promise for those who trust in Him. Today's impossibilities are tomorrow's testimonies. When I was in that military cell awaiting execution, it felt like the end. When I walked through icy mountains with my exhausted family, it felt too much. When I lived in a refugee camp, not knowing if we would ever have a permanent home, it seemed hopeless. But God was writing a testimony that now inspires thousands. Your current impossible situation is material for the miracle God is preparing. There is a verse that has become my anchor in the darkest moments. Jeremiah 33:3. Call to me and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. I cried out at 3,000 meters altitude in a fighter jet. I cried out from a prison cell. I cried out from caves in icy mountains. Each time, God answered in ways I never imagined. He can do the same for you. That marriage that seems over, God can restore it. That addiction that enslaves, God can break it. That terrifying illness, God has the final say. That prodigal son who disappeared, God knows exactly where he is and how to bring him back. I'm not saying it will be easy. My path involved losing everything: career, identity, country, security. But I gained infinitely more than I lost. I gained peace that transcends understanding. I gained purpose that is worth more than prestige. I gained an eternal family that will never abandon me. If you were to ask me, if you could go back and change everything, avoid that moment on the plane, keep your comfortable life, would you? My answer would be immediate. Never. Not for all the military ranks in the world. Not for all the financial security imaginable. Because knowing Jesus, experiencing his presence, seeing his power, living his purpose, that is worth more than anything this world offers. As I write these words, 4 years have passed since that night over Kermanshah. 4 years since a voice stopped the missiles and changed my eternal destiny. Sometimes I still dream about that moment. I'm in the cockpit, the building in my sights, my finger on the trigger. But in the dream, this time I pull the trigger. The missiles are launched. I see the explosion, the flames, and I wake up screaming, sweating, thanking God that it never really happened, that he stopped me. These dreams remind me how close I came to darkness. They keep me humble. They motivate me to speak louder about what God has done. That's why I share my testimony wherever I'm invited. Churches, conferences, universities, refugee camps. Because there are millions of people in their own metaphorical booths, pulling metaphorical triggers, destroying lives or themselves. They need to hear that God can stop them. Perhaps you are one of them. Perhaps you're in your own cockpit right now. Your version of pulling the trigger might be different from mine. It could be that relationship you know you should end, but you continue. It could be that addiction you promised to quit, but you keep feeding it. It could be that resentment that poisons you, but you refuse to let go. It could be that career that demands compromising your integrity, but you continue anyway. God is speaking, trying to stop you from destroying what cannot be recovered. The question is, will you listen? You don't need to wait until you're in an extreme crisis. You don't need to desert the army or cross icy mountains. You can answer right now, where you are, in the intimacy of your heart. If you feel that God is calling you, if something in this testimony resonated deeply in your spirit, if you recognize that you have made wrong decisions and need someone to take control, I invite you to pray this prayer with me. Jesus, I have tried to control my life. I have made destructive choices. I have ignored your voice, but today I choose to listen to it. Today I choose to let go of control and let you guide me. Forgive me for all my mistakes. Purify me. Transform me. Speak to me as you spoke in that cabin. Prevent me from destroying what you love. Use me to build instead of destroy. I surrender my whole life to you. Be my Lord, my Savior, my Commander. Amen. If you prayed this sincerely, something has changed in the spiritual realm. The angels are celebrating. Your name has been written in the book of life. The same spirit that filled my cabin now dwells within you. This is just the beginning. Seek out a community of believers. Read the Bible, perhaps starting with the Gospel of John. Pray daily. Not empty religious rituals, but real conversations with God. And share your testimony. Tell what God has done in your heart today. For those who are already Christians but are discouraged, let me remind you, the same God who disabled sophisticated weapon systems can disable any weapon the enemy uses against you. The same God who thwarted military patrols can thwart your adversaries. The same God who provided in desolate mountains will provide in your desert. Keep praying, keep believing, keep moving forward. The miracles have not ceased. God continues to speak from booths, from cells, from impossible situations. And to my brothers and sisters, wherever following Christ may cost you freedom or your life, listen to this. God is with you. He has not forgotten you. Every prayer you whisper in secret, He hears. Every tear you shed, He counts. Every risk you take for the gospel, He sees. Stand firm. The suffering you experience now is nothing compared to the glory that will be revealed. I conclude with the blessing that Yusuf gave me on the night of my baptism, and now I share it with you. May the God who calmed storms calm your inner storms. May the God who parted the sea open paths where you only see walls. May the God who resurrected the dead resurrect your buried dreams. May the God who spoke from the cockpit of an airplane speak directly to your situation now. And never forget, heaven is closer than you think. And the God of heaven is more interested in you than you imagine. Go in peace, live in victory, and remember, when your weapons fail against God's plan, be thankful, because He has better weapons fighting for you. He loves you. He sees you. He is with you. From someone who tried to destroy a church and ended up being welcomed by it.